Today, we're diving deep into a game that took a world we all loved and just plunged it headfirst into darkness. Yep, we're talking about The Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess. We're going to deconstruct just how this ambitious, kind of moody adventure became such a landmark title in a truly legendary series.
So let's just start with a number. A big one. Nearly 9 million. That's about how many people, how many players, picked up their controllers and answered the call for this epic quest. It's one of the best-selling games in the entire franchise for a reason.
And what exactly was that call? Well, their mission was to save the entire kingdom of Hyrule from being totally swallowed up by this creepy, corrupting darkness called the Twilight. This was not your average adventure. This was a desperate, all-out fight for the light.
And at the very heart of the struggle is our hero, Link. But, this was a long way from the cheerful hero we'd seen in some other games. This Link was thrown into a much darker, way more mature story. One that's all about loss and the seriously heavy weight of destiny.
Which brings us to our first big topic, how Nintendo completely reimagined a legend. See, this wasn't just another sequel. No way. This was a bold, very intentional step away from what fans had come to expect.
To do that, the developers really leaned into this genre called dark fantasy. Now, what's that? It's basically when you mix your epic quests with a heavy dose of horror and dread. The result is this grim but kind of hauntingly beautiful atmosphere. And wow, was this artistic style a massive shift. Instead of a bright, fairy tale kingdom, you were dropped into a Hyrule that felt like it was in real, actual peril. We're talking gnarled, twisted woods and unsettling creatures just lurking in the shadows.
Okay, now let's get to the single most important innovation in the whole game, the dual world mechanic. And this wasn't just a gimmick for the story, it was the absolute heart of how you played the game.
So, your adventure kicks off in the familiar world of light. An idyllic Hyrule with sunny fields and a huge, majestic castle. It's the peaceful home you know and love, and it's what you're fighting to protect.
But then, all of that peace just gets shattered. A corrupting twilight starts to bleed into the land, twisting all those familiar places into a shadowy, distorted nightmare. The difference is just so stark and, honestly, really unsettling.
The whole game is really built around this idea. You are constantly jumping back and forth between these two completely opposite realms. You're solving puzzles and fighting enemies that might only show up in one world but not the other. It's brilliant.
And here's the crucial twist. When Link goes into the Twilight Realm, he can't stay human. He's forced into the shape of a powerful wolf, and this completely changes how you play. All of a sudden, you have new senses for tracking things down and a totally different way to fight.
So you've got this dark world, you can turn into a wolf. How did Link actually face all these new threats? Well, let's get into the heart and soul of any Zelda game, the incredible dungeons, the clever puzzles, and the awesome combat.
Okay, both critics and players raved about the dungeon designs in this game, and for a very good reason. These were not simple mazes. They were massive, multi-layered puzzles. You had the totally disorienting mirror mazes in the Arbiter's grounds, the crazy gravity-defying platforming in the City in the Sky, and the chilling, spooky exploration of the Snow Peak ruins. Each one was a seriously memorable test of your skills.
Now this is super important. The game launched on two consoles at once, the GameCube and the brand new Wii, and that meant there were two very different ways to play. The Wii version used these innovative motion controls, so you'd actually swing the remote to swing your sword. The GameCube version was more traditional, but here's the wild part. To make the motion controls work for right-handed players, Nintendo literally mirrored the entire game world for the Wii release.
This choice was a pretty big deal. It meant you could tackle this huge adventure with some groundbreaking new tech, or you could stick with the classic, precise controls that fans already knew and loved. It was a really fascinating moment in gaming history.
So what's the long-term result of all this? Well, this game didn't just sell millions of copies. It left a deep, profound legacy that would go on to shape the future of the series and even the action-adventure genre itself.
You can really break down its impact into three main areas. First, you've got the innovative gameplay, like the wolf transformation, which you can see influencing mechanics in later Zelda games. Second, its surprisingly deep and emotional story just set a new standard for narrative in the series. And finally, its technical performance and sheer epic scale really raised the bar for what was possible on home consoles at the time.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This sentiment was echoed by critics everywhere. As one major outlet put it, the Zelda series has always been a benchmark for innovation and storytelling, and Twilight Princess was a perfect example of that.
All right, so after all of that, the big question is still on the table. Should you take on this epic quest? Let's weigh the adventure a little bit. Like any grand journey, Twilight Princess absolutely had its brilliant, shining moments, but it also had a few challenges that are probably worth knowing about if you're a new player.
So on the one hand, you get a super rich story, groundbreaking gameplay, and a world that is just incredibly immersive. But on the other hand, some critics did point out that a few sections late in the game could feel a bit repetitive, and yeah, the motion controls on the Wii definitely weren't for everyone.
So what's the bottom line here? This is a game where you will master two completely different forms of combat, as a swordsman and as a wolf. You're going to be flipping between light and shadow to solve puzzles in these massive, complex dungeons. And you'll get to experience a story that's praised for its mature tone, all while being guided by one of the series' most iconic characters ever, the mysterious imp, Midna.
And after dozens and dozens of hours of tough battles and brain-bending puzzles, the game rewards you with this just profound sense of accomplishment, a moment of quiet wonder as you look out over this vast, beautiful world that you saved from being extinguished.
Which really just leaves us with one final question that gets to the very heart of what this game is all about. What can a hero truly learn from embracing their own shadow? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us.